Alright, so this is going to be part 2 to what if Deku had permeation. So in the last part, you guys very much seem to enjoy it, and from what I could tell from the commenters, you guys want Deku to have one for all. So that's what we're going to do. But I guess I gotta clear up kind of the perception with Mirio and One for All, I think, because this is going to be my opinion, but I always see this in the comments and I don't really understand it too much. And that is the fact that people say if Mirio were to get One for All, that it would kind of reset his entire training and he would have to start from zero. And I don't really believe that for a few reasons. The first off is that, yeah, like One for All does increase your quirk, and by a bit. We don't know exactly by how much. It could be 100%, it could be 50, it could be some sort of percent, right? But Mirio's quirk isn't like others where it's like it can get stronger. Once you're intangible, you're intangible. It's not like something where it's like super strength or some sort of projectile or any kind of physical thing. It's more of taking something away, which is his solid form, and you can't really increase or multiply by zero, if that makes sense. Now another part is that's what I don't really get. Also the fact that he, like people say you have to restart his training, but he already knows a lot of this stuff. I don't think it'd be too hard to control them, the two things separately. Obviously he would have to learn how to use One for All, but unlike Deku, he has a lot more muscle mass just because he's a lot larger and probably he's more built, so it would be easier for him to use One for All. Anyways, let's get on topic. Let's go back on topic, and that is the story. So we would have started our story at the beginning of the first school day, that being with Deku walking into class. Also, I forgot to mention the reason why Deku worked on his quirk mostly inside of his body is because with Mirio, if you tell, that's what he kind of did for most of his life. It seems like it's only until he got into high school that he really did, bulk up that much. Because if you see in the flashbacks in middle school and things like that, he isn't too large. It seems like it's mostly just natural kind of muscle that his body naturally becomes that muscular. So that's gonna be similar to Deku. Since he does share the same father as Mirio, obviously they're gonna have similar genetics. That being, Deku's gonna be a little bit taller, probably the same size as Bakugo, and he is gonna be a little bit more muscular, just by genetics alone. So he is naturally a little bit more stronger, not too much obviously, but since he did the training with Mirio, mostly on his body this time and a little bit on his quirk, he is a lot stronger than he would have been in the series, just on the base. So, and let's get back to the story. Deku would have walked in, and this is where he would see Ida and Bakugo really, kind of having that argument about the feet on the table. So Deku would have walked up and would have told Bakugo kind of a little bit off, telling him that it's not really that, it's not really appropriate to do that. And Bakugo would have been like, yeah, whatever, and then he would have dropped his feet to the ground, and Ida would have turned around and looked at Deku, and he would have noticed that it was the same person who saved Uraraka. He would have praised Deku for doing such a heroic act, and would have really downplayed himself because he didn't think about doing that. And if it was a real kind of scenario, obviously he would have tried to save her as well. Deku wouldn't have really said too much about this. He would have said that it was alright, it was only a test, so obviously he would have done the same if it wasn't. So Ida, lifts off his head and accepts this kind of fact. So this is when Uraraka comes through, and this is where she notices Deku, and she's kind of hesitant to talk to him because of exactly how it happens, if you remember what happened. but she ultimately does. She's kind of embarrassed because the way that Deku saved her, but still engages with conversation with him. She says that she thanks him and she wonders why he became naked when he saved her. And Deku becomes red in the face because of this question, and he kind of scratches the back of his head, saying, well, it's kind of my quirk. It makes me intangible, and my clothes are also part of that. And both Ida and Uraraka are like, oh, I see, right? Kind of embarrassed for Deku, knowing that they have this kind of, he has this kind of quirk. So after this, Deku has to go, or after this is when Aizawa actually comes to the classroom, and this is where the quirk assessment actually happens. So basically, Aizawa tells the class that there's going to be a quirk assessment, and they're going to test out each of the quirks, and whoever does the worst on this actually gets expelled. So as they're doing this, they have to change their PE uniforms, and they have to go and do it. So Deku, because he's a lot more physically stronger than he was in canon, he is going to have an easier time doing all these just in general. So even if he didn't get a good score on each test or one of the tests, he would have still been able to get a somewhat relatively easy kind of way to beat everyone, or not really. He had like a safe kind of thing, right? He wouldn't have been last because his overall average would have been high enough to not really get him expelled, I guess. So, or maybe it wouldn't. It's kind of hard to tell with the others because we don't really know their score. So we would have to go and do the first part of the test. So this is where Bakugo would have to do the ball throw because he did get first place during the entry exam, at least for the public one. So this is where Bakugo would have to throw the ball. He throws it without his quirk, only getting 70 meters, and then he uses his quirk and he gets over 700 meters. So that's the big kind of difference between the quirks. So each person has to do their own test, or they have to do the test themselves. So Deku would have to do the ball throw, and he doesn't have that good of a throw because, well, he's not gonna have like superhuman levels of throwing balls because his quirk isn't really meant for that. He can't really do it that well, so he has to throw it normally. So let's say he gets around the same as Bakugo, that being 70 meters. He can't really pass many people with that, but he has to accept that. So let's go over the other tests and things like speed. I think Deku would have a relatively faster speed than most, just because of his intangibility, being able to boost his momentum pretty fast by going and slipping into the ground. So I think he would have gotten probably third place. I think Todoroki might be a little bit faster than him, and then obviously Ito I think would get first. So that's kind of what I think. So after that, it would have to be the kind of grip strength, and I think Deku, I believe he got around 50 kilograms in the actual test. So in this one, we're gonna bump it up a bit more and say that it's around 80 kilograms, just because of how he's a bit more physically stronger. So it's not that much of an impressive score, but it is, I would say, stronger than average compared to a lot of the other classmates who don't have strength related quirks. So yeah, after that it would be the side to sides, and Deku wouldn't have a big score because of, obviously, he's still kind of normal, and his quirk, I guess it could work a little bit, but I guess what he would do in that scenario is kind of only sink his soles of his feet and then make them solid again to give him a little bit of momentum. So I guess that would give him a little average, more than a higher than average score on that one as well, being probably 5th place, I would say, with Mineta being first because of his sticky balls. And then the other tests he would do pretty well, something like push-ups. He wouldn't get first place obviously, but he would get, like I said before, in most of these tests he would get better than average. So at the end of the day, it would be someone like either the Invisible Girl or maybe Mineta, but at the end of the day, someone would have to get kicked out. After saying this, or after Aizawa would have said something similar to that, this is where Deku would actually come in and protest it. I don't think he'd be one to really say that that should be allowed, because just because their quirks are weak doesn't mean that they can't train them, because he knows a lot about that because of how his brother and he is. And this is where Aizawa would have noticed, he would have known that Deku is Mirio's brother because of the last name and the quirk, as well as the hair color. Because even though Mirio has black hair in this one, if you don't remember why, it's mostly because of genetics. Deku would have seen, or he would have seen the similar kind of hair and the kind of eyes and things like that. So after that, this is where Aizawa would have just accepted it, or would have agreed with Deku and just basically says it was just a test, so people would have tried more. And as this is all happening, All Might would have been watching Class 1A just how he does in the anime, thinking that, wow, this is Mirio's brother. Not only did All Might see him save Uraraka, but he also saw him stand up for the person about to be expelled. Aizawa would have told All Might that he could have not hidden, right? He could have just been out there and just watched and no one would have cared. But he says it would have been better just to do this so he wouldn't distract everyone. After a while, and towards the end of the day, this is where Deku, or not Deku, but All Might actually gets to the class and tells everyone that he's going to be the combat instructor. He notices Deku right away because of his brother, as well as him meeting him during the sludge villain attack, and also because of what he did during the quirk assessment. So he congratulates Deku in front of the class, and everyone's kind of like, whoa, you know, All Might, they're kind of shocked at this. And Deku's like, no, I just met him like once outside of school. And they would have been like, whoa, still, that's pretty impressive just to know a hero like that. And All Might's like, well, class, let's get back on topic. And this is where he introduces the next test, and that's going to be the heroes versus villains. So everyone gets to get their hero costume. So Deku's hero costume, I don't know exactly how it should look like, but obviously it's going to have the fibers, or his hair fibers in it, so that when he goes through things or turns intangible, he doesn't lose his clothes. So this is where Deku would have something similar to Mirio, that being like a skin tight suit with a cape, but I feel like it wouldn't be an exact copy, and I'm not sure what his hero name would be, just because of, I don't want him to be like a carbon copy of Mirio, if that makes sense. So you guys can tell me some ideas, and maybe I'll draw it in the future, and it could be like a speed drawing that I could have in the background for one of these parts if I get enough detail for it. So yeah. So after this, he would get to that kind of the testing grounds, and this is where he would get people to choose the teams by getting a random ball. Basically, he's making the teams by draw. So it would be the same teams as in canon, that being Uraraka and Deku versus Ida and Bakugo. So the same thing would have happened where Deku would have looked at the map, or not the map, but the kind of the layout of the building, so that he could have like a better understanding of how and where to really go, especially using his quirk like his. So Deku is gonna have a bit of a disadvantage in this, because obviously because he's on different floors, instead of having solid ground beneath him, they're gonna be on separate floors. So if he falls down, it's not like he could use his quirk to push him back up with the momentum as much as he could with something solid ground solid ground, because obviously there isn't going to be that gap of air. So he has a bit of a disadvantage with that, not being really to he's not going to be able to really take advantage of his quirk and his speed like that. So what happens is, obviously they walk in. Bakugo, he wouldn't have totally he wouldn't have totally ignored Ida. I think he would have listened to him quite a little bit. I think Ida would have told him to stay up top since it'd be the easiest to defend. And Bakugo says, alright, fine, because he knows exactly how Deku's quirk works with the intangibility. And he knows that he struggled with it for a long time. But with those 10 months of training, or those 10 months, he doesn't really know exactly how it went down or how far he's progressed, especially knowing his brother, because I think Bakugo would have known about Deku's brother because obviously it's his friend's brother, as well as basically Mirio being a almost celebrity with his kind of antics that he did during the sports festival. So he would be somewhat known, as well as things like that. So he knows that Deku can do some amazing things if he has trained hard enough. So he stays back up top with Ida. So Deku and Uraraka would keep on going upwards until they reach the second to top floor, and this is where they come up with the plan for Deku to kind of distract them while Uraraka gets the thing. So in this, I don't think it's gonna be hard for them to really get it right. So Deku would basically jump into the ceiling, and I guess he wouldn't be able to really because it'd be too high. So he would have to go through the entryway, and this is where Bakugo and Ida would be, with Ida basically picking up the bomb and running as people get close. And this is where Bakugo would come to fight Deku. He would try to use explosions on him, but Deku would use his intangibility to basically become intangible and not get hurt. So this is where Bakugo just tries to make a bunch of smoke so that Deku can't see either. So when Deku has to let go of his permeation, because if you don't know, if you use permeation, that means you can't breathe and you can't see. So Deku would have to eventually let go of it so that he'd be able to see, as well as basically you lose all your senses when you use permeation, or at least when you use it on certain parts of your body. Like if you use it on your head, you can't hear, you can't smell, you can't see, and you can't feel anything around your head. So that's the big problem with it. So Deku would have to let go of it, and this is where he just sees so much smoke, and Bakugo would actually punch him in the stomach, pushing Deku a bit back. And this is where Deku just basically what he does is that he uses permeation to sink his legs into the ground halfway through, so only his chest is above, and then make his legs solid again to push him upwards to kind of rush towards Bakugo. This makes it a lot faster since when you use permeation, it basically shoots you out of the ground. This causes Bakugo to wrench back in pain after getting hit, and Ida is still running away from Uraraka at this point. So as that's happening, as Bakugo's trying to hit Deku again, this is where Deku does something similar to Mirio, where he makes his fist intangible and goes for Bakugo's face. Bakugo tries to block it, but it just goes through, blinding him because his fist is basically, or his hand is covering his eyes using his intangibility. Bakugo doesn't know what's happening, and Deku takes advantage of it and hits him, causing Bakugo to fall over to the ground. And this is where Deku goes for Ida this time, making it where his body's intangible all the way down to his kind of face, just how Mirio kind of does it. because he still needs that kind of place to hang on, because like I said before, it isn't solid ground beneath him, it's mostly air. So he's gonna fall through if he doesn't have anything to hook him in, you know, that floor. So he would continue doing this, and he would finally get to Ida, because Ida wouldn't have been able to notice this, and he would just pop out of the ground and grab Ida, and this is where Ida would try to resist, giving enough time for Uraraka to touch the bomb, and this is where they win. So yeah, as this is all happening, this is where All Might's watching. So in the next part, we'll go over whatever the conversation is. So this is gonna be the end of the video. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you like more of my content, please subscribe. And if you want to see my other content, such as my speed drawings or creepypasta, they're gonna be on my channel. And if you want more of those videos, tell me down below. And if you made it to the end of the video, please comment down CS so that I know that you support the channel. And with that being said, this is going to be the video, so yeah.